Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with multi-award-winning vocalist and saxophonist Vanessa Collier. This soulful blues artist is a 2026 Blues Music Award triple nominee and will swing through Kansas City on her year-long Keep It Saxy Tour with a show at Knuckleheads in Kansas City on April 9th, 2026 at 7:30 p.m. We get into her swing through Kansas City, her career, and her sixth and most recent album in 2024's Do It My Own Way. She is known for seamlessly weaving together funk, soul, rock, and blues styles through soulful vocals, searing saxophone solos, and witty songwriting skills. With her career still in its infancy, Vanessa has already turned many heads, garnering tremendous accolades for her trademark high-energy, powerful, fiery, and passionate live shows. From her start on the saxophone in the fourth grade to her budding basketball career and all the spots in between, we get into a career on the rise. Enjoy this interview.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting into your Knuckleheads visit that will be on April 9th here in Kansas City, Missouri, and
yes,
your new album and everything that's going on in your world. So it's great to catch up with you. Thank you for taking a minute out.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. So before we get into your career and coming to Kansas City in April in earnest, I want to start with this. We look at the calendar now, and it's mid-March, and 6 years ago this pandemic was changing everything, especially for musicians. How did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the way that you create and live today?
Oh, such a great question. So I actually did something completely out of the norm, and I didn't actually touch my saxophone for about 7 months. I had a bunch of things just kind of end. I lost my dog right, like 3 days after I got home. I lost my dog, and so I was kind of struggling through that, and a relationship ended for me at the same time. So it was just the end of a lot of things. And so I actually my mom found this local farm, and so I started volunteering there. And so I'd go and pull weeds for like 8 hours, it was just really transformative for me. I think up until that point, I had kind of put up with more than I should, if that makes sense. So
sure,
it was sort of the end of all that, and just turning over a relief of demanding more respect and more making sure that I surround myself with people that value me, And so, of course that changes your writing as well, because how can it not, right? Like,
yeah,
this whole Do It My Own Way record was kind of like, I've been in the blues world. I've had a foot in the blues world since I started, because I toured with Joe Louis Walker, and he was in the blues world, but he did all the things that I loved. So he played the gospel and the rock and funk and soul and all of it equally well. And so he was sort of my blueprint, but this Do It My Own Way record was sort of a step outside of that world. It was more into the R&B and the soul side, and definitely a lot more messaging about, knowing your worth and doing it the way that makes you happy. Because that's sort of how I've set out against after the pandemic. It's sort of like, man, like if the music thing doesn't work out, it's fine, but I want to do it in a way that does make me happy, that every decision is, my own, and I don't regret that. And I'm thankful that as a woman in the industry, like pretty much all my decisions for the last 10 years of touring have been that. But it's just a continuation of that thought process.
So take me back to your beginnings. Where were you born and raised?
So I was born outside of Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. And then we moved around quite a bit for my parents' jobs. They're both college professors. So we first moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania for a year. Then we moved to Columbia, Maryland for about 10. And then we moved to the Philly area. So kind of all those, I was raised in all those areas. I would say that like Columbia, Maryland is where I started music. And that's kind of where I blossomed in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. So how did the saxophone become the instrument? How did this career take hold? How did it evolve to where you're at today?
Yeah, so basically I saw there was a Mary-Kate and Ashley TV show called Two of a Kind, and it's like a little half-hour special I watch after school. And on one of the episodes, the dad, pulls out his tenor saxophone and starts playing it in the attic. And I happened to see that episode and was just like enamored with the horns. So I kind of just begged my mom. I was like, please rent me one, please rent me one. And she did. She caved and rented me one. And then like I basically took to it in a way that my band directors were telling my mom, like, hey, this isn't normal for kids not to like squeak. Everyone squeaks. And she's not squeaking. So like, it'd be really advantageous for her to get lessons. So I started for about a little over a year, taking saxophone lessons with a clarinetist from the Army Field Band. And then at which point, like, he basically said I outgrew his saxophone knowledge and I needed a real saxophone teacher. So my middle school band director knew this guy, Chris Vidala, who everybody knows if you've heard a Chuck Mangione record ever, because he's on all that. He's the woodwind artist for 20 plus years for Chuck Mangione. And so I ended up taking lessons with him as a 7th grader and just like loved every minute of it, He'd have me sight reading all sorts of stuff. So seeing a piece of music for the first time and just like reading it down, learning jazz, funk, soul, rock and roll, like a little bit of everything. He kind of opened the doors for me and introduced me to like people like Cannonball Adderley, who has been one of my favorite saxophonists since the beginning. And so then, play in all the bands that you possibly can. And once I saw Chris, like he would tour the world. I mean, as a clinician, he would tour the world, but then like Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, B.B. King, everybody who rolled through town, the National Symphony Orchestra. He's still on the road with Chuck Mangione, and he's the director of jazz studies at University of Maryland. And so I was like, great, this is a career. I had no idea. Like, I had no idea you could do this as a career. At that point, I was trying to be a WNBA player and a restaurateur. So once I saw him, that he was full-time touring, full-time teaching, just doing a full-time musician thing, I was like, that's what I want to do. And I was like, I had decided that by the end of like 9th grade, beginning of sophomore year, So it's just kind of been slowly building bit by bit as you do since then.
So talk to me about the first live show you saw that left an impression and made you think, I want to do that one day.
Oh, that's a great question. There are some really big standout concerts to me. One, we saw the Eagles when I was young, and I loved the vocal harmonies are like one of my favorite things. So it was probably the Eagles, and then I saw a Joshua Redmond concert that I came home and just like played saxophone for like 3 hours, trying to do all the things he did. And then, let's see, there was one more. Oh, goodness. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of pivotal ones, I feel like, but the third one's escaping me at the moment.
It's interesting. Before I really got into listening to jazz, a good friend of mine that introduced me to jazz was talking about one of our assistant principals in high school was a huge Joshua Redmond fan. And this was in like the late 80s. And he instantly had the cool card. Like, we were like, no way. He's listening to Redmond. But I've always been a fan of his, and I moderated a jazz talk before he was at the Folly Theater here in Kansas City about a month ago, and got to meet him and talk to him, and that was really cool. He is the depth of him, his soul, you just feel it emanate, and it's amazing. So I'm curious, how did your career take off? What was the initial jump onto stage, and how have you evolved over the years?
Yeah, I mean that initial jump for sure, because I was so introverted, like I barely played out in college. But the initial jump on stage was definitely Joe Louis Walker. because he came through Philly, and my friend was playing with him at the time and said, "Hey, bring your horn." And so I met Joe on the break, and then Joe brought me up for the first 2 songs of the set, and he wouldn't let me leave the stage. Like, he was like, "Nope, stay up here and play." Like, and that was something Joe was amazing at. It was like, he would give you all the space in the world as long as you were saying something, you know? So that was definitely like formative for me. I call my time with Joe my master's degree, just because of that, you know? I mean, it shapes you as an artist when you're a sideman, you know what I mean? And then for me, that was like, as soon as that ended, I was like, I gotta do my own thing. So my mom actually was pushing me to make my own record. So I made my first record maybe 6 months later, something like that.
So was it always going to be music for you? Were you always dreaming about being a musician?
I mean, not initially. Initially, it was just something very fun. I was a very athletic person, and so like I played basketball and was, you know, on every AAU team and like, you know, leading scorer for that from the time I was like 8 years old, you know. And then I played 4 years of varsity in basketball in high school. So, you know, at some point I thought I would do that. I thought you could do all of it, you know what I mean? Because I was balancing basketball, you know, school, and then all my band activities. And so I figured I could continue doing all 3. So it really wasn't until like end of freshman year, beginning of sophomore year that I decided, you know, this is the path I'm choosing. And then, you know, that's the path I've been on ever since. I haven't worked a day job. Like, I've been doing something in music since high school, you know?
So the one thing about getting into music is you have this dream of what your career is going to be like, this idea of how it's all going to turn out. And then, as we all know, there's a reality to it when you're living it, you're doing it. So what's been the difference between what you thought a music career was going to be like and the fact that you've lived it for so long now?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think definitely coming out of college, you know, I went to a music college in Boston, and you know, I kind of came in with very little ego. I basically had no ego, so I didn't expect that I was like that much further ahead of anyone that I came in with, and I actually came in pretty advanced, which I didn't know until later. So, you know, one of the biggest things coming out was just like, you know, you expect things to happen a lot faster than they do, because I'm a hard worker. I don't expect anything to come to me easily. But I figured, you know, if you put the time in and the effort in and you're talented, then there's kind of no stopping you, right? And to some degree that is true. Like, the only thing that does stop you is your mental game. But I am surprised, like, you know, I really wanted to pay everybody super well right from the jump. And that's just I had this realization the other day that it was like, I finally got to that point, like at the end of last year, where I wanted to be 10 years ago, paying people. It was where I am now. So it takes a lot more than you think. It's not an easy career by any means, and it's much less dependent on your talent and your hard work, and more on like who you know and who you're willing to network with, which was surprising to me.
So what do you like the best about being a professional musician?
You know, I think the travel and meeting people, I think those are two things that you can't replace them, you know. They're invaluable experiences because you meet people from all over, all walks of life, all points in their life, you know, having found new love, having just lost the love of their life, having just retired, having, you know, just started a new job. Like, there are lots of these points that you meet people at, and you realize, regardless of whether we're speaking English or we're speaking French or we're speaking German or I'm in Italy, you know, like all of these places, we are all much more alike than we are different. And, you know, I feel like that is definitely one of the benefits of travel, whether you're a musician or not. Is like you really get to see that we're all in it, you know, together. We're all fighting the same fight. And it brings a lot more understanding and kindness and, you know, just the desire to raise humanity, I guess, you know.
So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, you know, all your fans, everyone that you work with, that you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
You know, I think that's ever changing. I really do. I'm open to that change. I think for me at my core, I really try to treat people well. That's something my mom instilled in me, is it doesn't really matter how other people treat you. You have to be respectful and kind, and you just walk away from situations that don't serve you. And that's me at my core. Like I really try to give people the respect, not that they earn, but that, you know, all people deserve. And I think, you know, I'm very principled as well. So that's something that I don't see a lot in the world. But I want to do the right thing because it's the right thing, you know, and I also learned that from my mom. So those would be the two things, like kindness and very principled.
So you were coming to Kansas City, to Knuckleheads. Have you been to Kansas City before?
I have. I've played Knuckleheads a few times, yeah.
Okay. So how did this come about? What's it like to play there? What's it like to come to Kansas City with the flowers blooming? What's this show going to be like?
Oh, I'm excited. You know, as long as we can get past that train, we'll be great. But I actually love Kansas City. My grandmother and my aunt are coming in for this show. They love Kansas City. They love going to Jack Stack. I don't know if that's a, you know, terrible thing to say for somebody who lives in Kansas City.
No.
Okay.
No, that's good.
Cool. So yeah, we always go there. And also, like, I do a lot of the legendary rhythm and blues cruises, which are based there. So we get a fair amount of the staff who helps keep that thing afloat, keeps that thing running, you know, and running like a well-oiled machine. They'll come out and say hi. Yeah, as far as my show goes, like, I'm pretty much pedal to the metal right from the get-go. And it's a lot of songwriting. It's mostly original, written by me. Lots of saxophone, lots of singing. I think a lot of people are surprised these days by my voice. And I've put a lot of intention behind, you know, making that just an equal instrument. Saxophone was definitely my first, but now I feel like voice and saxophone are pretty equal. So, yeah, expect a high-energy show full of good songwriting, good songs, and, you know, expect to feel uplifted and moved.
So let's get to the good business. Knuckleheads, April 9th, Do It My Own Way is the latest album. If anybody wants to dive into any of the music, get tickets, anything else going on in your world, where's the best place to go?
Oh, VanessaCollier.com, COLLIER. That's the best way. Or you can type in Vanessa and saxophone into Google, and I usually pop up. But yeah, the website's definitely the central hub for everything.
I will make it easy. I will have links in the show notes. Well, have a great time in Kansas City. Thank you so much for taking a minute out. I can't wait to profile it on Neon Jazz, so I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate you.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Vanessa for coming on by the show. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.